What is going on, YouTube? And today, as you can tell from the title, we are going to be talking about Cobra Kai Season 3. I just binge watched it over the weekend. I'm so glad that they made the episodes come out earlier. They probably figured, hey, it's January 1st. It's a long weekend. It's going to be perfect time to binge watch right before 2021 really starts on Monday. Sorry about that. This is a live, so there's going to be some distractions. But anyways, I just binge watched through the whole 10 episodes. The first 5 or so minutes of this review are going to be without spoilers. So if you don't want, so those of you who are tuning in, you won't hear anything. But after that, I'm going to talk about all the different episodes and the spoilers. So get ready, but I will warn you before I do that. But anyway, so first off, great season. I love it. All the characters come back. You know, they bring back Miguel and everybody, and they really dive into the situation with Miguel, Robbie, and all the other students really quickly. There's not a whole lot of dawdling. You know, it doesn't start off slow like a lot of other shows do, especially when there's such a huge cliffhanger from season 2. And at this point, basically when it starts off, you know, we have Johnny, who's essentially down and out, right? He's just like, oh crap, like my star student, he's in the hospital. He feels like he's caused it. You know, there's you have Kreese that has come back and taken over Cobra Kai, and then you have, you know, LaRusso or Daniel LaRusso, who's kind of like his role is kind of like, well, you know, I trained the guy that kicked the kid over the railing, and it's kind of like, you know, everyone feels like they're at fault in something, except for Kreese, obviously, because he's like the main antagonist overall. But the one thing I love about this season is that it goes into a lot more kind of the lore or like the backgrounds of each of the characters a lot more, especially with Lando Lusso and like going back to Miyagi-Do and like kind of exploring more of the history of it a little bit more. I mean, you can't see that in the trailers already. Like he goes back to Japan. He meets up with Chosen, the guy who tried to kill him in the second movie. So it dives into a lot of things where it's kind of like, he explores more of the origin of, you know, the philosophy of that karate, because it was all about defense. It was all about like harmony, and, you know, it wasn't about attacking someone. It was about just defending yourself. But, you know, he finds out a lot more things about the family or like about the legacy of, you know, their martial arts. And then it also dives into Kreese's past too. So it gives you more depth of why he's such a dick. You know, essentially, it gives you more insight into how he became the person he became. And so that's very interesting. So like you kind of get a more sense of like, okay, these guys aren't just evil just because of their evil. You know, it's not just it's not black and white. And that's really what like I feel like Cobra Kai has done as a whole these last 3 seasons. It's like, you know, in the first few movies, you have LaRusso, who's like the main protagonist. He's the hero, and everyone else is the bad guy, right? And that's just kind of like the black and whiteness of the trilogy in the beginning. But now they go back into this world that's like, okay, not everything's just black and white. You know, everything is kind of mixed in between. You don't know. Everyone becomes the protagonist and antagonist. Like they keep switching back and forth because, you know, when we first start in season 1, it's all from Johnny's perspective, which was kind of plays off of a lot of the Karate Kid theories, and even from, you know, Barney Stinson's How I Met Your Mother theory, where it's like the Karate Kid is actually Johnny Lawrence because he is the Karate Kid who gets his girlfriend stolen by Daniel LaRusso, the newcomer, and then, you know, he wins the tournament with an illegal kick, which it's funny because it's like if you go back into watch the first movie, they do say like, you know, face hits are illegal, which is how Johnny got kicked in the head. So it's like, but then they also say like anything from the waist up is okay. So whatever, but I'm not going to go into that. But anyways, so this season is great in terms of how it dives into each individual character. You know, a lot of people have a redemption arc throughout this season, which is great. And it also kind of brings out so much more diversity in each and every character, even between, because like I mean, even from the beginning, you know, you have Miguel, Hawk, and Dimitri. You know, three nerds who get picked on by all these rich kids and all these like bullies, and then eventually, you know, they learn martial arts to defend themselves, but they eventually, you know, kind of end up. They went from hero to the villain, and it's almost like, you know, if you don't die a hero, you live you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. It's like the whole Batman quote, you know. And a lot of these kids do, you know, a lot of these kids like eventually, you know, they all think in their own perspective, like they're right, like they're all the heroes in their own story. And I think that's what makes this whole season so dynamic. It's like every person feels like, you know, the reason, you know, they're like why they relate to such and such is because, you know, they have such complex characters, you know, like you're some people wondering like why would anyone team themselves up with Kreese, you know? He has like a bad history and he's all this jazz, but the way he manipulates, you know, all his students and like, you know, and it comes to them when they're at a very vulnerable point, you know, he builds that trust with them without, you know, really giving his whole plan of why he just wants to like control something, you know? And it's really interesting on how they kind of build through this season, and it's just really great fun. And I feel like if you can watch it, it's only half an hour episodes each. So at the end of the day, you're only seeing 4.5 hours of screen time. So that you can binge watch this in a day if you wanted to. You have that kind of time, or just do an episode a night. But anyways, so I'm going to go into spoilers now. If you don't want to watch anymore and you don't want to hear about the season, you're going to watch it yourself, please just exit out now. But if you care, if you watched all the episodes already, like I have, let's go talking to spoilers. So in 3, 2, 1, it's no longer spoiler free. So the ending of this is kind of crazy, right? Like I literally just watched the end of it like half an hour ago. And so everything is still fresh in my mind. So some things that I love from this season is like, okay, how you know, how Johnny, you know, he tries to redeem himself by becoming kind of like a off way like physical therapist for Miguel. You know, he's the one that kind of spurs Miguel's like awaken from a coma, and then he tries to help him rehabilitate. Arguably, the whole rehabilitation process of how Johnny does things, I'm just like, dude, like, how are you not doing more damage than good, you know? Like, he keeps on doing stupid crap like, oh, hey, like, let me dangle something in front of you, and then Miguel falls out of his wheelchair. I'm like, I'm pretty sure this is damaging his spine from the surgical, like, surgery that he just received. Surgical surgery? That's not right. Spinal surgery that he received. So it's like, I'm like, how is this not hurting him more, you know? But, you know, they throw in some good moments, you know, when they go to that 80s concert. I think it was Def Leppard. I don't even know who the band was. But, you know, Miguel starts tapping his foot, and you're like, holy crap, you know, he's moving again and just doing all these things. And, like, Johnny's character, like, I feel like he's, like, the typical, like, guy who's just, like, he doesn't, like, anything that's outside of like his like kind of toxic masculinity world is just like it's off to him, you know. Like when the physical therapist like first works with Miguel and talks to him about like positive thoughts and like, you know, don't be down on yourself, he's just like, oh my god, it's stupid. And it's like, but I'm like, dude, like this guy's a physical therapist, like he went to school for this, and plus like it's kind of true, like you need positive thoughts. Like if you're just going to think like I'm never going to walk again, well, then you're probably never going to walk again. You just gave up. You know, granted, you know, they throw it to like they dial it up to 11 where like the guy's like positive thoughts, think of your chakra and your chi and, you know, pull in the sunshine. And it's like, okay, he's a hippie, but technically he went through grad school, you know, and did all this for physical therapy or an occupational therapy, whatever hell it is. So it's like, you know, how like some of it is like true, but then like, you know, they put it into a way that's like kind of crazy. And then like I think for LaRusso or for Daniel, like he kind of goes to his arc of like it's like he was like for him, he's been so traumatized like from his like childhood and like what Cobra Kai has done for him, which I can understand, you know. these kids beat the crap out of him at every turn, and they were just like constantly being a dick to him when he was just the new guy. And then he has to go back to find a way to where it's like, okay, because to him it's just all binary. Cobra Kai equals evil, and anyone associated with Cobra Kai equals evil. So therefore, I'm right, they're wrong. That's like his world. And so, but then he comes to find out that like, okay, everybody's human, and everybody makes mistakes, and everyone is not necessarily always right. And that really comes to a point, actually, when they finally throw in Allie. So Allie, if you guys don't know, that was the girlfriend that Johnny and Daniel fought over in the first movie. They bring her back in the last few episodes, I think the last 2 or 3 episodes, and they basically kind of throw her as like, she's like the mediator. Like she's like the one with like, okay, like Johnny has his side of the story, and then Daniel has his side of the story. And she's like, no, I see both of your points, but here's my side, which is like what ties them together, because like from her perspective, it's like, okay, Johnny was like, constantly having home troubles, and then like constantly being with his friends. And then here's a nice guy, LaRusso, who I'm just going to be friendly to. And then out of nowhere, like, they have that love triangle, right? So from her perspective, she also thinks like, well, the two of you, like the reason I dated both of you is because you're actually very similar. It's not like obviously between Johnny and Daniel, think that they're like, no, we're nothing alike. But in reality, they're a lot alike. And Allie is like the glue that's like, hey, the reason I dated both of you is because you both exert, attributes that I find attractive. They just happen to manifest themselves differently. So I really like that perspective that Allie brings in to the characters. And they kind of have a revelation of like, holy crap, you know what? I've been holding all these grudges this whole time. And it's really because like, I couldn't see the other person's perspective. I think it's kind of great in the sense that like, they kind of have this redemption, and they can finally start seeing each other eye to eye. Other things that kind of, and then other things that kind of happen to like all these, the other characters, Robbie, at this point, like this dude has like the roughest life, right? He grew up more or less without a father because Johnny was a deadbeat. And then his mother was an alcoholic who's now in rehab, but he has nowhere to go. Like at the beginning of the story, he runs away, and then he feels betrayed by Daniel when they kind of corner him to be arrested, even though like arguably if the more he runs, the worse it gets, but he didn't see that obviously, because when you're a teenager and you're young, you don't get that. You don't see 5 steps ahead of you what's going to happen. You only see the first few feet, and and so for him, he eventually gets arrested. He goes to juvenile detention, and he has to kind of fight for not his life per se, but like he has to fight for respect in there. And even though Daniel and both Johnny keep trying to reach out to him, obviously, it doesn't really help, because at this point, he's like, look, the one person I know I can't count on, my dad, because like he is training, he trained the guy that stole my girlfriend, so I hate his ass for whatever. And plus, he's abandoned me multiple times. Then there's LaRusso, who is like become a surrogate father, but now it's like, oh, wait, you just threw me to the cops. It's like, well, I'm going to hate you too, because I don't want to get arrested, even though like arguably like that's like the best thing that was better for him, because as long as he gets a lighter sentence or doesn't like go on some kind of crazy record, or like a permanent record, like he still has a future, but he doesn't see that, of course. But then the worst thing, of course, like for him is like he ends up joining Kreese's Cobra Kai's, and it's crazy just because like Kreese he sees the vulnerability in Robbie, and he sees like, oh man, I can totally manipulate this kid and also turn him against his own father because he's just an asshole. And so that's what he does. He turns Robbie against both Daniel LaRusso and Johnny Lawrence, which is crazy. And because at the end they're just like, you know what, screw you guys, I'm with Cobra Kai John Kreese here. But it's so crazy on like, and but like, kind of way you don't blame him, because he's been like let down by so many people in his life. Obviously, like as like us watching, and you're like, what the hell are you doing? Like, get the hell out of there! Like, that guy's crazy. Like everyone's telling you to not listen to him, but the people that are telling you to not listen to him are all the people that have failed you. So how can you trust that guy when the one person that they say is crazy has been like kind of been there for you a little bit, So I mean, it's kind of out there, but like you can kind of empathize a little bit, if you just sit down and kind of think about it a little bit. It's like, yeah, I can see why from his perspective it's like this. Some of the things that are a little bit crazy, I think I don't know if they call a loophole, but like kind of they gloss over. So like, there's a lot of fights, obviously in season 3, and Miguel, having first he had back surgery or spinal surgery or whatever surgery. He heals, and he there's a chance that he'll never walk again, but he obviously does, because like you see in the even the trailers that he comes back, and like midway, like towards the end of the season, he's still trying to like relearn karate in a way, like he's trying to do moves, but he can't because he's still like a little bit injured. And then on like the last or second to last episode, there's this crazy all-out fight, and like freaking Miguel is getting like slammed against like the wall, the ground, like he falls on the same part of his spine, and he has that one Asian bully kid who's just like punching his back like a mother effer, and I'm just like, holy crap! Like he only recovered like 2 months ago. Like, how is this not damaging his? Like, there has to be permanent damage. Like, there already is permanent damage, but now it's like making it worse. And I was like, holy crap! Like, if either he healed magnificently well, or this kid is gonna grow up with like a bad back for the rest of his life, because he's gonna get re-injured all over again, So I was like, what is going on? And I guess those are things they just kind of gloss over. That's like, oh no, he's fine. Like he's healed 100%, and even in the most miraculous shortest amount of time, it's okay. And it's like, no, it ain't. And then you have Samantha LaRusso, Daniel's daughter, who she has a lot of fear in her character this year or this season, because like she got. Because, when she fought Tori was like, she came in with a grudge, and she came in with like she played dirty, she brought out those like spiked brass knuckles and like freaking tore, like, I mean, those are crazy scars. So it looks like it tore skin and maybe even flesh, right? So, and so she's like freaked out because, which I don't blame her, because like, you think that like this girl, like she clearly does not play fair. And she's just going to keep playing dirty, and like she has to go through this, her own kind of not redemption, but like kind of her own overcoming of the fear of, facing that girl again, which I don't blame her. But in a lot of ways, like but she's kind of boring this season, to be honest. Like aside from all that, I'm just kind of like, whatever. Like I don't really care about you. I care more about what happens to Miguel. At the end of the day, like Robbie, I'm like, I get it. Like, you've been betrayed. You don't want to listen to your father. You don't want to listen to Daniel. But at the same time, like, I still don't care too much about his character. Miguel is like number one. And then Miguel and also Hawk is also another person, or Eli. Because, Eli is like the type of person, like, he was super picked on because he has a cleft lip. And the one bully that that was super a dick to him was eventually joins Cobra Kai, so he starts having like this kind of like a fear, moment. But then, he eventually beats up one of the bullies that was constantly terrorizing him as a child, or when he was a little bit younger. And finally, like, the one main bully was like, oh crap, like, this guy has like a lot of anger, and I probably shouldn't mess with him because he's kind of crazy, and he's not something to be messed with. But I feel like he has the best redemption arc in this whole thing, because, from episode 1 through even most of 10, he's a complete asshole. He feels that like Cobra Kai is the best thing for him, which I can understand. Like, he was the nerd that got picked on relentlessly, but now he can defend himself. He got a crazy eagle tattoo, which is whatever, or a hawk tattoo, and then he has another like Reaper tattoo, which I was like, how are you getting like what? What's also like, what tattoo artist is tattooing these underage kids? That's insane. But anyways, like it's kind of funny though. But like he goes through all these situations where he really like he kind of sees himself from like a third person perspective, where he does a lot of bad crap and he like really regrets it. First he in one of the bigger fights he breaks Dimitri's arm. A guy who's been his best friend like throughout his life, he broke his arm, and he was like, he didn't want to do it, but because of peer pressure and all his Cobra Kai buddies like egging him on, he does it, but you can tell he regrets it like severely. And then over time, like as Kreese starts like kind of starts incorporating all these assholes into like all these like bullies and like people like basically that should not be taught like any kind of martial arts, because like Kreese is like, I just want soldiers. Whereas Eli, he sees it as a place of redemption. He sees it as a place of sanctuary for the weak, not give the people who have some power already and give them more power. Because that's what Kreese wants to do, is like, I just want soldiers. I want people who are willing to fight and give them more tools to fight. Versus, Hawk is more like, I want to see people who can't fight and then have them learn how to fight, just the Cobra Kai style, because we've been picked on for so much, this philosophy makes more sense so that I don't get picked on. But then at the end, in season 10, or not season 10, in episode 10, he finally kind of comes to realization, like he has this all-out battle and at LaRusso's house, which I will get into later, which is also crazy, and he basically has a moment of clarity and was finally realized he sees his friends getting their butts kicked. And he's like, what have I done? Like, my best friends are getting hurt and I'm part of the cause. So he eventually finally like snaps out of it and protects Eli. And I was just like, finally, dude, like, wake the F up, bro. Like, your best friends who have been there for you are getting your butt kicked because you're too, like, you can't see past this line. But he eventually does, because he starts seeing through Kreese's BS. He starts seeing what Kreese is doing, and he eventually was like, you know what, screw this. I'm going to go the other way, which is great. So I'm so happy that at the end, like, Hawk, Eli, or Hawk, Dimitri, and Miguel are kind of all back together, because we started with them and looks like, they're going to be together again. I think that's great. Tori, her character, man, like she's been played hard, like she comes from a rough childhood, where she has to work 2 jobs just to keep like, bills paid. She got kicked out of school and now has to do everything kind of on the back end. And the creepiest part was, I think, in episode 1 or 2, where like her own landlord is this like creepy pedophile who's like positioning himself as like, hey, if you want to come over tonight, I can give you something like, a break on your rent. I'm just like, okay, yeah. Tori is very attractive, and I think she's like in her like early 20s or whatever, or like, but I'm like, that's gross, dude. In this show, she's like 17, not even, like that's disgusting. Like, what a sick bastard. Like, I hope that guy, like, hope that landlord like gets shocked by electricity or something, But like, her arc is very interesting because like she's down and out and she feels extremely bad because at the end of the day, she knows it was her fault because she started the fight with Samantha LaRusso, and then, started also a fight between everybody else, essentially, right? Everybody came in and was like, oh, let's like all out duel at the school. And she knows she started. So she feels extremely guilty about Miguel, but then gets over it really quickly because Miguel kind of was like, hey, like, you have your own issues, which, she doesn't want to admit to, I guess. And so she kind of like, it was like, you know what? I'm tired of being angry and sad at myself. And then Kreese provided her an avenue of way to like direct that anger. And I guess it worked for her, So she's like, whatever, like this guy even helped me out. And I can see why I should come back, So she's like kind of like a Cobra Kai forever type of deal, which is kind of a bummer, but maybe in season 4 we'll see something different. Let's see what else is there. One of the craziest thing is like this season is Kreese. So we finally know why Kreese is as crazy as he is. So it goes in. So for this season, we go into his background where when he was a kid, he was basically bullied. He was all these like he was working at a diner and like this like big jock football guy was being a complete dick to him. And, he eventually joins like the army. And once he's in the army, that's where he meets Terry Silver and all these other people that actually come into play later. And then it's also where he learns martial arts because his commanding officer, the captain, he knows like I guess technically like a Korean version of karate, because and so he learns it from that captain. But the captain is the guy who spews like no mercy, strike hard, strike first, and that like you should not like you need to lose your humanity in order so that people don't die or don't get into situations. But like the reason it's like embedded in him is because eventually he becomes like a special forces guy within the army, and on a mission he basically screws up. Like he could have sacrificed one of his own men during a mission in order to save everybody else and also not get captured, but because he couldn't pull the switch essentially of like igniting some demolition, everyone gets captured. And then as they're captured as POWs, they're forced to do a one-on-one fight. And it's over a pit of like dangerous snakes, like poisonous snakes. There's like pythons in there. It's insane. And so whoever dies, it's like, or whoever loses gets thrown into a pit and, gets killed. So at this point, Kreese is just seeing like all of his buddies, he's seeing all of his teammates just do one-on-one battles, and then one drops like one after the other. And at the end, he ends up having to fight his own commanding officer, who is a bit of a dick. He purposely tells him his girlfriend is like, he is killed after an accident just to throw him off emotionally. And, he's all like, what? It's everyone for themselves at this point because, it's the, fight for survival. And at the end of it, he realizes like, yeah, right. You know what? You're right, Captain. And I'm going to survive, but you're not. Excuse me. So Kreese, like, he's kind of had a lot of trauma in his life. Obviously crazy PTSD from being a Vietnam veteran, which plays into how he gets a lot of sympathy from the community, like even though like he's been kind of, even though in the 80s, like, because in this universe in the 80s, he kind of gets plastered as the mean guy because he's like the overzealous, the kind of like crazy karate instructor who pushes his kids too far. But that era is over. And now the new generation, you have people who are like, oh, like the first thing, like he tells us, like, oh, I'm retired captain from the U.S. Army, and everyone's like, oh shoot, like he's a veteran, he's a Vietnam vet who got crapped on, back in the 70s, and they're extremely revered now in this day and age, which they should be. So like his character, he plays off of that. He's like, I'm a Vietnam vet, I'm an officer. So like the community is like, how can you like be mean to this guy? He's gone through so much, and he uses that to his advantage. And it's like it's really interesting how he uses it to manipulate a lot of people, especially the community. One thing I find like kind of funny, this whole point, like, and like Daniel LaRusso also says it, like, they pretty much do this whole thing like They ban any kind of like physical altercation. They ban karate at the school. They want to cancel the All Valley tournament because like they basically made it a karate footloose, where it's like they blame the act, but they don't blame the people who are doing it. It's just like when you look at the story, it's kind of like how people do a witch hunt against video games for because they're the cause of shootings, and it's like no, dude, like it goes down to parenting, it goes down to who their friends are and stuff. So it's kind of the same situation. Like the school and the community kind of overcorrects themselves. Like, well, what do we do about all these fights? Oh yeah, because like all these kids learn karate and learn how to fight. We should just ban karate instead of like looking at the bigger situations. Like, why did these kids fight? Like, what is going on with them? So they banned the one thing, and it's kind of stupid. Like if you think about it, they're like, hey, we're gonna get rid of the tournament. Because of like all this, because it provokes violence. I'm like, so you have all these karate dojos, or like you have these like 3 or 4 karate, like all these people who learn, martial arts, and instead of providing them a safe venue like a karate tournament where they can, show their skills, show like what they can do, and compete in a safe and monitored, fashion, you take it away. Which means like the only place they can fight now is on the streets where there are no rules, there are no referees, there is no points being taken, and there's no trophy at the end of the day except for pride. So it's like you're almost like you're literally throwing these kids to the wolves, like you kind of look at the community and it's like, are you people like just like brain dead? And I get it from their perspective. It's like, we need to get rid of martial arts, but it's like, having that tournament there is better than not, and it's like, no, we need to get rid of it. And because, promotes violence, I'm like, if they're not going to fight in a tournament, you think they're just like not going to fight each other at all? Like it somehow just goes away. And, and that's kind of like, from my perspective, I was like, these kids are like, these people like in government are idiots, which is not surprising given our own real government at this point. But anyways, that's a whole nother thing. But at the end of this, so I'm gonna finish up here. So it's only 30 minutes long. So at the end of the season, something that crazy happened. So we have this crazy fight between pretty much like at one point, or like let me rewind a bit. Around episode 8 and 9, there are now 3 karate dojos. You have LaRusso's, Miyagi-Do, you have Cobra Kai with Kreese, and then you have Johnny Lawrence with his Eagle Fang karate or whatever. And they realize that, you know what? We have 3 here, but we need to start, instead of having a triangle battle, we need to merge and have it be one-on-one. So, we have Miyagi-Do and, or LaRusso and Lawrence coming together and forming a single team, and it's all against Cobra Kai because at this point, like it goes back to a little bit more binary, where it's like, okay, these are the good guys, those are the bad guys, and here's how we do it. And I think that team up is really good. But what's crazy at the end is that, they go back to another flashback of where Terry Silver, he thanks Kreese for basically saving his life because he was supposed to fight in that gauntlet of death. But Kreese is like, I'll volunteer in your place, does a little bit of Hunger Game, Katniss thing going there for him. It's like, I volunteer as tribute, whatever, and then he's like, hey, whatever you need in life, like you saved my life, like I owe you, like whatever you need. And obviously we know from Karate Kid 3, Silver becomes, super rich. Like he becomes a super rich businessman and arguably is super corrupt, but still becomes a super rich businessman. And looks like Terry Silver is going to come back into play in season 4 because at the end of season 3, he gives a call to Terry Silver. You have John Kreese looking at a photo of himself, of him and Silver and another soldier from Vietnam, which I thought there was another soldier because there's one soldier who has basically the Terry Silver hair from the 3rd movie. It's like a slick back ponytail, and I'm like, oh, that's that kid. Oh, that's Terry Silver. But then it's like that kid gets killed, and I'm like, wait a minute, what happened just now? And the captain turns around and is like, yeah, Silver, that's your fault. And it's like, I'm like, I thought that was Terry Silver this whole time. Like, what the hell? So that was kind of like a funny twist. But anyways, so John Kreese called Terry Silver at the end of the season, which I'm like, Interesting. So basically, we're getting like almost like an amalgam of the first of the Karate movies, but in TV mode. You know, like because in the beginning it was like white. It was all about the All Valley tournament, and Cobra Kai versus Miyagi, right? And then now we have, and this whole third season is about going back to Japan and finding your roots. And now, which kind of mirrors the season or movie number two. And now in season 4 and beyond, however long it goes, looks like they're going to mirror a little bit of movie 3 now because you're throwing back in Terry Silver, which I'm going to guess, like, I don't know how he's going to play into it aside from like funding it or maybe bringing him as like a teacher as well and teaching these kids all those crazy moves that they try to teach Daniel in the third movie, which was like breaking boards, sweeping the leg, and all that craziness. So I'm guessing like these kids are going to learn how to fight very, very dirty, and I'm hoping. I guess the only thing they can really do from their perspective of like Johnny and LaRusso is like teach him how to do that like numbing technique that that Chosen did, and then all those other craziness. So I'm really excited for what happens in season 4. And I really like this season. And luckily, I mean, I was kind of bummed there was only 10 episodes, but I feel like if it was any longer, they would have just dragged out what would have happened. And unless they were going to go all the way to the tournament. And I also really love how they bring back Allie. The only things I didn't like was the unrealistic recovery that Miguel had and all the injuries that he should have been sustaining like this whole time. But aside from that, everything was pretty great. I feel like, Ralph Macchio and William Zabka really are doing a great job in terms of bringing this universe back and really setting it up for the next generation, because I love the first Karate Kid movies and this show has been awesome. So anyways, I've talked long enough. It's been 37 minutes. So thank you guys for watching. Please like the video if you like the video. So like the video. And please subscribe for more stuff. And Cobra Kai never dies. Later, guys.